Okay, so now it's recording. So first of all, thank you very much to the UNIDA University, to the English department, to my new colleague, Aris. I hope that we can start a series of, collaborations and projects together. And of course, let me first thank Haikal, my former student, to give me the opportunity to be with you today virtually and trying to, share some key ideas on research methodology in English language teaching. That I think that in general will be shared views, but of course I think that the purpose of this is that we learn together. So of course, if you have any doubt or question or comment, or you interrupt me, but please with a microphone, because as I will be sharing my screen, maybe you will not, I will not be able to see the chat or even the cameras. Or at the very end, we will have some time for, some discussion and questions and these things, okay? So I'm going to share my screen, okay? Yes. Can you see it properly? Can you see the presentation? Yes? Yes? Okay, I guess that you can.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
It works.
Great. Okay, so, well, as you know, this session will be devoted to research methodology in English language teaching. My name, as my colleagues have said, is Cristina. Okay, you can see my email there on the screen in case that you want to contact me after this session, because I think that collaboration between institutions is essential in our current society. This is the table of contents that I would like to share with you. Okay, as you can see, I will start introducing myself. Then I would move to the concept of research, why we should research, the starting point, some steps that we should follow to carry out effective research, the structure of our research, a section that I've called frequently asked questions that you will see at the very end, and some final remarks. Okay, so before dealing with research methodology, who am I? Why I am here? Well, I am an associate professor at the University of Córdoba in the Department of English Studies, and I've been working with languages for a time now. I have a BA in Translation Studies, and then I did another in English Studies, so these two fields are quite connected in my life.
Sorry, Christina. Sorry.
Yes.
Can you repeat? It was freezing before, so maybe you
Okay.
can start.
Okay.
Sorry.
From the very beginning.
No, just this one. That's okay.
Okay. So I was saying, who am I? Okay, I'm an associate professor of the English and German department here at the University of Córdoba, and I work mainly at the Faculty of Education. I have a BA in Translation Studies. Then I did another BA in English Studies, because these two fields are quite connected in both my personal and professional life. Then an MA in Specialist Translation. And in 2011, I completed my PhD in Languages and Cultures. Since that moment, I have over 10 edited books, over 60 papers in peer-reviewed journals, over 100 chapters, over 100 presentations in specialized conferences. So, as you can imagine, research is not something new for me, okay, at this moment. By the way, in the pictures, you can see the rectorate of of my university, which if you have the chance to come here, please let me know, and I will be more than happy to receive you. And this is a picture of my faculty, the Faculty of Education. Okay. But apart from this, I have also supervised quite a lot, number of, a big number of BA theses, master theses, also PhD dissertations, okay, and I've participated in numerous academic and research, national and international projects. So, as I said, I am familiar with research. It is true that I have a European or a Western perspective because of the context where I live, and where I devote my professional life. But you will see that there are many things in common with what you do or what you are expected to do in the following months. So now let's move to the first key question. Okay, what is research? Okay, this is the first question when talking about ELT research. But what is research? Some people associate research with images like the ones that you can see here on the screen, with a microscope, with the augmented lenses, with many data in computers. And in fact, if you look for the word research in Google Images, for example, you will find things similar to this. But actually, my research is closer to these images that you can see here. My research is more connected to my teaching practice, to other teachers' performance. It is also connected to improving or trying to improve teachers' performance in primary education, in early childhood education. And I've included here also the image of a computer. Why? Because nowadays these digital means allow us to communicate with people all over the world, okay, easily, using technology to conduct research, to analyze data together, to carry out comparative studies. So as I said, instead of a microscope, we work with people, with other teachers, with students, with educational stakeholders. So, as I said, my research is closer to this image that you can see here on the screen. What is ELT research? Well, educational research in general, and as a consequence, of course, in our case, English language teaching or ELT research, is a type of systematic investigation. This is a very important word, okay, with the aim of exploring, analyzing, and trying to solve challenges in education. In our case, in EFL, in English as a Foreign Language Education, okay. How? We need to adopt rigorous and well-defined scientific processes to gather the data and then to analyze them, okay, for, as I said, trying to solve problems, to face challenges, and also to support knowledge and advancement in, for example, theories, methodologies, approaches to education in general. Okay. I found this quote interesting because J.W. Best defines educational research as the activity directed towards the development of a science of behavior in educational situations, but with the ultimate objective of providing knowledge that will permit, and look at this, the educator to achieve their goals through the most effective methods. Okay, so what are our goals? Well, in general, that our students learn how to communicate in English, right? And for this purpose, we need to investigate the most effective methods, okay? So, in general, the main purpose of ELT research, okay, is to expand the knowledge that exists, okay, by providing new solutions to different problems or different challenges, as I said, in EFL pedagogy, but also at the same time to try to improve our teaching practices and also our students' learning practices. Okay. In this field, some ELT researchers, some educational researchers in the field of modern languages also seek answers to questions related to motivation, anxiety, development, classroom management, design of materials, etc. Okay, so the perspectives are numerous, okay, and we should take advantage of this situation, okay. So some characteristics of the EFL or the ELT researcher, and also ELT research in general. Okay, in general, ELT research aims to identify or to solve a specific problem. Okay, for example, lack of motivation among our students, or in the case of the pandemic, how we managed to continue teaching using technology. Okay, ELT research adopts a combination of primary and secondary research methods, okay, in the data collection process. When we talk about primary research methods, is where we are in direct contact, for example, with the source, like for example, if we carry out interviews, okay. And in the case of secondary research methods, this can be connected, for example, to previous literature on the topic, okay. Also, the ELT researcher adopts specific methodologies, procedures, and analysis, okay, to try to arrive at the most objective responses or reliable results, depending on the approach to research that we use. This is something that we will discuss later, okay? So it is very important that we use sound methodologies, sound procedures, and sound analysis to use with our data in order to get good results, okay, reliable results that we can use, okay. Our findings, our results that are related to, as we said before, to identify and solve specific problems, are useful also in the development of principles and theories that can provide better insights into pressing issues. As I said, for example, in the case of problems, as the case of lack of motivation, for example, or anxiety when speaking in the foreign language, okay? And it is very important to remember that ELT research is interdisciplinary, okay? Why? Because it is connected to different fields and also studies complex factual relations. How or why? Well, if we're talking, for example, about anxiety when speaking in the foreign language, okay, this is also connected to psychology, for example, okay? While if we are investigating the use of a specific app to improve our learners' vocabulary acquisition, for example, we are also connected to educational technology, okay? Or if we are trying to analyze the skills of EFL teachers, okay, we are also connected to the field of competencies, okay? So, of course, research in our field in English language teaching is and must be interdisciplinary in nature, okay? So these are some important ideas to bear in mind. So now that we have a general idea of what research is, the second question is why, okay? Why should we do research? Why should EFL teachers do research? Well, there are different answers for this question. First, because research helps us reflect on our own teaching practice. That is, how can we improve our teaching performance? Okay, something that does not work or does not work completely as we would like it. Okay, how can we solve that? Okay. Also, we should do research to understand how languages are learned and taught. Why? Because this way, again, we will facilitate our students and also our colleagues' work. Okay? Also, of course, to test and evaluate new theories, approaches, resources, etc. Okay? And decide or suggest those that are effective. Of course, it is true that no single approach is perfect, and what can work in a specific context may not be work exactly the same in another context, of course. Okay, that's why replication studies are so important nowadays. Okay, but despite no single approach is perfect or no single approach is enough, with research we can test theories and approaches and resources that may help our teaching performance. Okay. Another reason to bridge the gap between theory and practice. Why? Because at least in my context, it is widely thought that schools are quite far from universities. Okay, that is that at university we teach lots of theory. We ask our students to read many books and to write many papers and so on. But then the reality at the schools is very different. Okay, so with research we can connect these two independent goals. We can try to bridge the gap between theory and practice. Okay, that's why it's important. And also to enhance collaboration and telecollaboration, that is distance collaboration, as what we are doing here today. Okay, how? Because my interests in research can be similar to yours, and we can try to develop a collaborative telecollaborative project by trying to test, for example, a specific resource to teach EFL in my classroom with my students and also in your classroom with your students, and see what works and what doesn't work in the context. What is similar in the two contexts, what is different in the two contexts, and what we can learn from each other. Okay, so I think that nowadays collaboration and telecollaboration is essential. Okay. As a kind of off-topic comment related to this, in my context in Spain, we are in terms of accreditation and in terms of in some cases tenure track positions, it is somehow penalized that more than one or maximum two authors write a paper together. But personally, I think that this is nonsense nowadays. Okay, because individual work in an isolated office in the middle of nowhere no longer exists, and telecollaboration, collaboration, cooperation between universities, between departments, between colleagues is nowadays for me a must. Okay. So some characteristics of a good researcher. Well, first of all, common sense. Okay, that we are connected to reality. We can want to improve the EFL level of all students in the world by using a specific app, but this is not realistic. Okay, it may work maybe in the future if we test it in many different contexts, but as a first approach, it is not connected to reality. Okay, so first thing, please, common sense. Okay. Then I think that curiosity is also essential. Okay, trying to get creative answers to anything that can challenge our teaching practice, our teaching context, etc. Okay, trying to want to know why things happen, or trying to get how others do things. Okay, And this is connected logically with the following valid point, that is good ideas and creativity. Of course, these three ideas, from my personal point of view, are connected, okay? But also, discipline and responsibility are essential. Why? Because research methodology needs to follow a series of steps, okay? And we cannot skip any necessary step in research and draw conclusions without the support of data. I mean, if we need to follow a process, it is necessary that we follow all the steps of this process, okay? Not that we take some isolated idea and we draw some huge conclusions that do not fit with the data that we have, okay? And also the last keyword here is dissemination. Researchers, we should communicate our results. This is the essence of science, okay? It is illogical that you carry out research and you write your results on a piece of paper and you put it on your drawer, okay? The idea of science, the essence of science, okay, and ELT research is also included in science, okay, is that we communicate, we disseminate our research, okay? So this is something very, very important. But now, let's move to the fourth point, the starting point. What do you want to do? What do you want to find out? Okay, what do I want to do in research? What do I want to find out? These questions can be difficult to answer, okay? But this is the starting point. We need to identify what we want to do, what we need to do, or what we want to find out, okay, in order to start research, okay? So some questions that we may think of when starting research. For example, how do I motivate my students? Or what types of tasks appeal most and work best in the classroom or in my classroom? How can I best prepare my learners to use English in their lives? Why are my learners anxious or unhappy when going to English lessons? What are EFL teachers' needs, or what are their perceptions about the topic? Okay, about connected to the previous students' anxiety. Okay, is there a new digital tool that I would like to use with my students? These are some questions that we may consider when starting research. Okay, because in the case of research, depending on the question that you choose here, okay, you will need a type of research or another type of research, okay? You can use experiments, okay? And you can also use some other types of results or perceptions, okay? Experiments. Well, for experiments, our question is, as you can see here on the screen, what would happen if I do this, okay? Or which idea or which approach, which methodology, which resource would work best in this specific context, okay? While if we are more connected to results or perceptions, our question will probably be more linked to questions like, what do people think about this, or what do students or teachers want or need, or what causes a specific effect, okay? So depending on this starting point, okay, we would need a type of research or another, okay? So once we have more or less clear our idea for the starting point, okay, please let me show you 6 key steps that we can follow when doing ELT research, okay? You can see here the 6 steps, and then we will talk about all of them individually, okay? First, ask the question, okay? that is, state the research questions. Then the objective of your research. In the third step, create your hypothesis. Okay. In the fourth step, choose your approach and your instrument or instruments. Okay. Of course, collect the data, and when you have the data, analyze the outcomes. And finally, draw the conclusions. Okay, we will see each of these 6 steps one by one. Okay, first, regarding the question, well, as I said some slides ago, common sense is essential. Okay, so try to think of a question that is answerable. Okay, considering your time, your resources, your capacity, the extension of the research, the funding, etc. Okay, so instead of a question like how can I improve EFL teaching in the wall, that it is a great question for utopia. Okay, try to be less ambitious. Okay, try to ask less ambitious questions, such as, for example, what is the level of motivation of my students or of the students in a specific context? Is there an improvement in my students' results if I use this resource or this app? Okay, or if I work in using e-learning or using blended learning or using face-to-face instruction. Okay, or what are teachers' perceptions, or to be a little bit more specific even, what are Indonesian teachers' perceptions about using artificial intelligence in English language teaching? Okay, so instead of the big question on how to improve EFL teaching in the wall, try to be more specific in order to have more realistic questions. Okay, then set the objectives. Considering your research question or your research questions, okay, identify your main objective. I've included the plural also here for objective, but I personally like when you are doing a BA thesis or MA thesis, that's you have a single main objective, because it will be easier to accomplish. Okay. Here, for example, you have to measure EFL students' motivation when learning new vocabulary. This can be your main objective, okay? And then, in order to reach this main objective, okay, identify other secondary objectives that will help you achieve this main objective. Like, for example, to compare EFL students' motivation considering their age, or considering their gender, or considering their context, or considering their socioeconomic status. So, different ideas. Or to identify the main approaches used to teach vocabulary. These secondary objectives will help you reach the main objective. Okay? And please consider that when setting the objectives in English, we use to plus the infinitive, okay? And all the objectives should follow this structure, okay? Then, the hypothesis. Well, first, what is a hypothesis? Well, a hypothesis is a prediction, okay? It's a type of prediction considering your research questions and your objectives, okay? Then you have, for example, the question, is there any improvement in my students' results if I use this resource or this app? Okay, imagine that this is your research question. In this case, your hypothesis will be, or this resource will improve my students' results, or this resource will not improve my students' results. And then with your analysis, with your when you conduct your study, you will see if your hypothesis can be validated, can be proved, or is refuted. Okay, but it's important that that you remember that a hypothesis must be testable. Okay, so the idea is that you set a simple sentence that then you can test in your research. Okay. Step 4, okay, approach an instrument. Okay, depending on what you want to do, we have spoken before of the difference between experiments and perceptions, for example. Okay, you should use a type of approach or another. Okay, in general, there are two worlds when talking about research methodology. That is quantitative research and qualitative research. Okay, then it is true that we also have mixed methods, which entails a combination of these two, okay, in order to triangulate the results. But in general, the general idea of quantitative studies, okay, is that the idea is to confirm or refute hypotheses about phenomena. The instruments that you use are more rigid, okay, and help you easily categorize the responses to different questions. And the methods are highly structured, okay, and for this you can use questionnaires or surveys or structured observation, okay. While in qualitative research, the main idea is to explore phenomena, okay. The instruments in general are more flexible, okay, and give you some flexibility to categorize the response to the different questions. And it is advisable the use of semi-structured methods, okay, like for example in-depth interviews or focus groups and participant observations, so you can get information in detail regarding the phenomena that you want to study, okay. Regarding analytical objectives, please see that while in quantitative what we want is to quantify variation, in the case of qualitative is describe variation, okay. So the approach is different, okay, and also the type of research is different, as you can see here, okay. Quantitative is more general for a group of people, for a population, while in the case of qualitative it is more focused on individual experiences. Regarding the types of questions that you can ask your participants, okay, in the case of quantitative is closed-ended, while in qualitative is open-ended, okay, as we saw before. The data in quantitative are numerical, while in qualitative tends to be textual, okay, understanding textual as both oral and written texts, okay, not only written texts, but also oral, okay. And also regarding the flexibility, as I said before, qualitative research is much more flexible than quantitative research, okay? But as I said, the purposes, the objectives are different, okay? So depending on what we want to do, we will need to choose a paradigm of research or another, or a mixed methods approach, okay? Here you have another summary of differences between quantitative and qualitative research, okay? While quantitative is more related to numbers and statistics, qualitative is more related to meaning. In the case of quantitative, the number of respondents must be high, okay? While in qualitative, you can use a few respondents. And by the way, if you use, for example, a case study, you can have a single respondent in a single context. Okay, so it depends a lot on the type of research that you want to carry out. Okay. And in the case of data analysis, usually in quantitative research, you use tools, digital tools such as R or SPSS or Excel. And in the case of qualitative analysis, you use thematic, discourse, and content analysis, and there's some software that can help you in the process, like NVivo or Atlas TI. But the reality is that in many cases you can you can conduct this data analysis even with a piece of paper and a couple of different highlighters. Okay, so as I said, the approach is different. Then, regarding the instruments, okay, some common instruments in ELT research. First, tests. Usually, when you have a pre-test and a post-test, okay? Imagine that you want to test a specific app, for example, with your students about the vocabulary related to, I don't know, climate change, for example, okay? So for this, you can do a pre-test to try to determine what students know about this topic before the experimentation, okay, that is before the implementation of your teaching proposal. And then when you finish this, you use a post-test that usually is the first, I mean, it's the same instrument as you use in the first iteration of the research, to check if they have improved their knowledge, for example, about climate change. Or if you are talking about anxiety, okay, to see their anxiety levels before your classes or before a test, for example, and then the levels of anxiety after the experiment or the test or wherever. Regarding questionnaires and surveys, here I also include a dichotomy between previously validated instruments versus instruments designed ad hoc, okay? What is the main difference of this? Well, you can take research that has an approach similar to yours, and in which they have used a validated instrument. And you can take this instrument, always, of course, with the appropriate references, okay, and use it in your context, okay? But it is true that in some cases, we want to do research on topics that have not been completely addressed in our context, or the instruments that we find do not meet exactly our requirements. So in this case, we can design an instrument for our research, okay? But if we do it, okay, we need to validate the questionnaire, for example, using the Delphi process, the Delphi method, with experts in the field. Okay, so it's very important that the instruments that you use, the questionnaires that you use, are validated, okay? Regardless if it's another person's creation or if it's your own design, okay? Another common instrument in our field is interviews, okay? We can see here in brackets 3 main types of interviews, okay? Structured, semi-structured, and open, okay? Structured is when you have a question and you only expect the response to this question. For example, if you use an online form, okay, so you have a question and the person includes their response, and that's all. In the case of open, okay, it's the opposite. You just start talking about the topic that you want to discuss with one of your participants, and that's all. But the semi-structured interviews benefits from these two approaches. Why? Because you have a series of questions that guides you as a researcher, okay? But then, depending on the participants' responses, you can add extra questions, extra comments in order to have this in-depth information that we presented before, okay? So, in general, semi-structured interviews are the most common interviews in ELT research, although structured interviews are also very useful because you don't need to meet the other person. You simply send them a Word document or a Google Forms or something like that with a question. The person answers, for example, written, and that's all. Okay, so these are things to bear in mind. Again, considering our time, our resources, you know, all these issues that can condition our research. okay? Then analyze the outcomes. As I said before, in the case of quantitative research, mainly you will need statistical analysis, okay, with SPSS or with R or with Excel or with any other tool, okay, Jamovi, etc. While in qualitative research, what you will usually do is thematic analysis, discourse analysis, or content analysis, okay? Personally, I usually use content analysis in my research, okay? And regarding analyzing the outcomes, if your research has been well designed, okay, that is, if you set your research questions, if you set your objectives, if you choose the adequate approach to this to your topic, the process of analysis shouldn't be difficult. But if the design is not good, if the instruments are not appropriate, if you want to do, for example, a quantitative analysis, but then you have, I don't know, 5 answers, okay, the analysis can be difficult to carry out and the outcomes will be unclear. Okay, so it is very important that we think about our research and then about how to proceed. Okay, this is essential. And finally, draw your conclusions. Okay, so are the research questions answered? Are the objectives achieved? Are their hypotheses supported or refuted? Okay, take them one by one and present them in the conclusions. Okay, it is very important that the objectives and the research questions and the conclusions are completely matched. Okay, this way it will be easier to the reader and to the reviewer to check if you did your research properly. Okay. Well, research structure. Okay, what is the structure that we should follow when carrying out research? Well, in general, okay, the typical structure of a paper, okay, is as you can see here. The title page, where you include the title, the author, okay. Then the abstract, where you summarize your research. Then the main body, I will go back to here later, okay, but the main body is, you know, your research. The references, okay, that are essential in research. I know that many of my students are not very happy with the APA system, but it is what we have, or MLA, depending on the context. But references are essential, okay? And then the last part is for annexes if needed. Okay, we don't always need to include annexes in our research. Okay, but in some cases, especially in master thesis, annexes can be very, very helpful. Okay, but going back to the main body of our thesis or of our paper, okay, this is divided into different sections, as you can see here. Okay. First, the introduction and justification of the topic, then methods, then results, then the discussion of the results, and then the conclusion. Okay. When I mention here the introduction and the justification, I also include here the revision of the theoretical framework that you have used. Okay, so I also included it here, although later I will devote a specific part to this section. Okay, but in general, this is a basic research structure that you can find in a book chapter, in a paper, in a master thesis, in a BA thesis, in PhD thesis, so, you know, in reports. So in general, this is a typical structure of research. Okay. That you have here again with a different, you know, a different image, okay, with a kind of infographic. And it is interesting that what I called before the body, okay, the body of the research, responds to these questions. Okay, so introduction is why, methods is how, results is what, okay, and the discussion and conclusion is so what, okay? So it's important that you consider these questions when carrying out your research. I've included here some recommendations for BAs and MA theses regarding the structure, okay? This is how we do it here, okay? I know that some people may change slightly parts of this, okay? But these are some recommendations that I would like to share with you. As you can see, here I've included 8 sections, okay? Of course, as we had before, the 8th is optional, it is only if needed, okay? But I would like to talk about all of these one by one, okay? So first, we have the introduction, okay? The purpose of the introduction is to present your project. And for this, I consider that 3 parts should be identified in the introduction. First, a general contextualization of the research project, okay, where you give a general overview of the topic, but nothing very detailed at this stage. Then the justification of your topic. Why is your topic important or necessary? Why have you chosen this? Does it respond to a social need? You know, why, okay, you chose this topic. And then that you present the structure of the thesis. Okay, this can be a paragraph or 2, but will help the reader to know the structure of the whole document. Okay, especially when you're doing a BA or an AMA thesis that can be, I don't know, 50 or 60 words easily. Okay. Then, in the case of BAs and MAs thesis, the second part should be the theoretical framework. That is the literature review. What have other people said about this topic? What are the most relevant papers on this topic that have been published internationally? Because this will help us in 2 senses. First, because it will help you identify the niche, okay, the gap for your research, but also because you can find an instrument that can be useful to apply in your context, okay? Then the third section would be the methodology. Here you should consider different subsections, okay? The first part would be the research design, where you define very specifically how you will conduct your research. If it's a quantitative study, if it's exploratory, you know, that you describe what you will be doing with your research, okay? Then the objectives and hypotheses that we presented before. Then that you describe the participants and the context, if necessary. For example, in the case of case studies, the context is also very important, okay? Then the instrument, and including here, if it's an ad hoc instrument, how the validation process has been, okay? Then the data gathering process and the data analysis process, okay? How you will collect the data. If you need, for example, permissions, if you're going to work with children, for example, okay, and how you will analyze the data that you obtain, okay. Then number 4 is the results or findings. It is true that there are some authors nowadays that consider that in the case of qualitative studies, we should talk more about findings than results, okay? Although nowadays, I mean, both could be used, but well, just a comment about this. And in this section, in the section of the results or of the findings, it is very important that you only describe your results, okay? Why? Because the discussion of your results, the connection with previous literature, will be in the 5th section, that is the discussion. Here is where you should comment your results and compare them with previous research, okay? This previous research can be consistent or not with your results, okay? It is not necessary that we always have the similar results that others had, okay? And it's important that you discuss your hypothesis one by one, okay? Because it will help the reader situate themselves in the context of your research, okay? Then the 6th part is the conclusion. Here, what are the most important remarks of your research? What are the most important parts of your research? But also, don't forget to include the limitations of your study. For example, if in quantitative analysis you had a limited population, or if you only used qualitative analysis, you can include here that maybe quantitative analysis could help triangulate the results, etc. Okay, and finish with future lines of research. How would you continue working on this area? Okay, so this is in general what I include in the conclusion. Then references. Here I included APA 7th edition because this is the most common reference system used in education. Okay. I know that in the field of humanities there are others like MLA, but it is true that at least in my field, 95% of the context in which I work use the 7th edition of APA. Okay. And finally, as I said, the annexes if needed. What can we include in the annexes? Well, for example, the instrument you have used, the materials that you have created, the transcripts of the interviews. Okay, so this is extra information that you give to your reader, okay, but it is not essential to understand your topic, your thesis or your project. Okay. 7. I will try to finish at 20 past, more or less, so we have the 10 last minutes for questions or doubts or whatever. I've included this section, frequently asked questions or frequently thought questions, because when we are new to research, we usually have doubts, and it is normal, okay? And we do not always know where to get the answers or who to ask, okay? So, well, some questions that I commonly find among my students. First, I don't have any ideas. Everything has been done. So what can I do? My recommendation for this is read. Read and read, because by reading previous research in the field of ELT, you will find, topics that can be interesting for you. And even, why not, you can replicate a study done, for example, in Germany. You can try to replicate it in your context. Okay, and this is an interesting idea if you don't have, if you are a little bit lost. Maybe they used a type of app, for example, educational technology in Germany, and you want to try to use it with your students and see if the results are similar or not. Okay, so my recommendation for this is read. Okay, reading is essential in research. Here, if I read a paper in English and I use some of its ideas in my thesis in Bahasa Indonesia, or in my case in Spanish, how do I include it as a reference? Well, here, this is connected to plagiarism. Please be careful with this. If you take an idea that is not yours, okay, even as you can see here, it's in English and you will use it in Bahasa Indonesia, the idea is not yours, so you need to include it as a reference. So you include the surname of the author or authors and the year, as in any other type of non-literal quotation in your text. Okay? But as I said, the idea is not yours. And at least in my context, probably there are two. Here we use a plagiarism detector that is Turnitin, that is a software where you upload students' papers and it analyzes the level of plagiarism. And as you can see here on the right, it even tells you where the sentence was taken from. Okay, so this that you can see in red, okay, is the source for this that is highlighted in red, or this that is highlighted here in blue has been taken from this reference here in blue too. Okay, so this is important. But also it is true that in some cases we are not sure if we are plagiarism, we're doing plagiarism or not. If we are carrying out plagiarism violations, and I strongly recommend you to read these infographics. Okay, as I will send the presentation to Heikel, you can read it properly because probably the letters are very small. But as you can see, there are different levels of plagiarism, okay? But even in here, okay, you are doing plagiarism, okay? So it is very important to consider this as a very important issue in research, okay? And connected to that, also when you take a picture to be included in your presentations or in your research or in wherever, you need to include the licenses, okay, the authors when needed. Okay, in all the previous slides that I've used, I've taken copyleft images, so it is not necessary to include the sources, but both in here that you can see here the link, and here, okay, you can see the original authors of this. So again, I strongly recommend you to read these these slides on the pictures that we can use or not. Okay. Then another question: can it replicate study that was conducted, for example, in Spain in my context, and how? Yes, the answer is yes, as I said before. Okay, replication is very important. Nowadays, it's quite trendy in computer-assisted language learning. Okay, because what works in a context may not work in a different context. Okay, so for this, first you identify the study that you want to replicate. You take the instruments and you follow the same methodology. If needed, you can contact the original author, okay? And then you follow the same steps, but in your context. And when you have done this, you compare your results to those of the original paper, okay? Basically, this would be the process of replication. How can I validate a questionnaire that I created ad hoc for my research? Well, as I said before, my recommendation here is that you use the Delphi method. This entails a series of consultations with experts in the field. Okay, so you follow a template for validation, and you can send it to different experts in the area, if possible, international experts, and they will give you the comments. You create a new version of the instrument based on these comments. You send it again till you all reach a consensus. Okay, this would be in simple words what the Delphi process, the Delphi method is. So you can create your questionnaires, but please validate them before using them. Can I take items from different questionnaires? and create my own instrument? Yes, but again, look at this word here. You need to validate it again, okay? Why? Because you're not taking exactly the same instrument that you have at the beginning, okay? You're taking a part from this, another part from this, and you're creating your own instrument. So as it is, again, your own instrument, you need to validate it, okay? So this is very, very important too. If I conduct interviews, can I do them online or face-to-face? Well, both options are totally permitted, but my recommendation is that if you choose to do them online, do all of them online. And if you decide to do it face-to-face, do all of them face-to-face. Why? Because the means, the medium of communication may alter somehow the responses. Okay, so my recommendation is both are totally acceptable, but if possible, try to use the same means for the interviews in both cases. Okay. I cannot corroborate my hypotheses. Can I modify them? Well, as we said before, it is not necessary that you corroborate all your hypotheses. You can refute them. You can take a hypothesis that then is, let's say, no consistent with what you find. There's no problem. There's no problem at all. Okay, but we shouldn't modify them. Okay, the importance is not that you corroborate or not your hypothesis. The important here is the findings that you got. Okay, that you emphasize this. Okay. Where should I start? This is the second most frequent question. Again, read. Reading is essential in research. Okay, so for getting ideas, for knowing more about the research processes, for getting familiar with instruments, with methodology in general, reading is a fundamental aspect. Okay. So some final remarks. As I said, I will try to attach myself to time. Well, ELT is essential for knowledge and pedagogy advancement. Okay, I think that it is something to bear in mind, because sometimes we are so focused on teaching that we forget researching. Okay, but we should find a balance. Also, ELT research can provide answers to practical educational challenges, okay, with scientific methods, okay, in this idea of connecting, bridging the gap between theory and practice, okay. Also, for the researchers and other agents involved in research, but also for teachers, also for students, ELT research improves learning, knowledge, skills, and understanding, okay. So it's important to consider this. Okay. ELT research can help our students apply their knowledge to practical situations. Okay, that is also very important in our current society. Also, research empowers us. Okay, why? Because we are supported by data. Okay, that help us teach and lead more strategically and effectively. Okay. And also, I think that ELT research helps us meet other educational stakeholders, other teachers, other students, other colleagues, other researchers. Okay, so I think it's very important in this sense. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention. I would like to use these last minutes for questions or doubts that you may have, some comments. As I said, well, I know that I was a little bit quickly, but as we started later and we had till 12:30 here, 5:30 there, I wanted to cover the whole content of my presentation. So thank you very much again. As I said before, here you have my email. And also, I will send Heikel the presentation in case that you need it, as well as the recording of the session. So I will stop sharing my screen. If you want, I can stop recording now, okay, in case that you feel more confident to talk without the recording, okay? So I will stop the recording now, okay? And we can start questions, comments.
questions, comments. Okay.